Welcome, welcome everyone to our online launch of Cafferty's truck. We hope that at some point in the future, we'll be able to meet face to face in the Poetry Society Cafe in London, where we used to hold Dempsey and Windle launches before the pandemic closed it. But tonight online, we're looking forward to 3 readings by Robin and readings from their own work by his 2 accomplished guests, Wendy Klein and Ian House. Robin completed the MA in writing poetry at Kingston University in 2012. He has had poems published in Agenda, Envoy, Orbis, Brittle Star, Poetry Salzburg, Poetry Scotland, Pennine Platform, The High Window, South, Stand, Rialto, The Interpreter's House, and North. He has been shortlisted for the Buzzwords, Bridport and Bath Poetry Cafe prizes, and he's represented in the Stanley Spencer anthology published by Two Rivers Press in 2018. His pamphlet, A Fury of Yellow, was published by Eyewear in November 2016. His collections, Momentary Turmoil and A Distant Hum, were published by Cinnamon in March 2018 and March 2021, respectively. We're looking forward to hearing the poems that Susan Nutting, who's here tonight, has described as a tour de force of subtlety, and Wendy Klein has called nuanced, sophisticated, with shadings of the allegorical. We fell in love with Cafferty and his truck, and we're very pleased that Robin brought the book to us and gave us the opportunity to set it off on its journey towards you and the reading public. So, without any more from me, I'm going to hand you over to Robin. Robin, would you like to unmute if you're not already?
I think I'm unmuted, am I? Yes.
You are.
No, you're
unmuted.
fine. You're fine.
I must try not to read when I'm muted. That's not a good plan. Well, good evening to you all. Thanks for coming. Thanks to Janice for organising everything. And last but not least, thanks to Uncle or possibly Auntie Zoom. Some years ago, we were having a few days in Dartmouth, a village perched on a hill above a lovely river and river mouth, home of top fish and chips with Agatha Christie's house and a steam railway on the other side of the river. None of this survives in the poems except the wonderfully noisy gulls which are always found in such places. While we were there one day, and for no apparent reason, the word Cafferty came to me out of the blue, closely followed by the near rhyme brackety, and the idea for the first poem of this pamphlet was born out of those sounds. And every few months over the next few years, a new Cafferty poem turned up in my mental in tray. I'm not really quite sure what made them Cafferty poems, but an important aspect was certainly the absence of Cafferty or any of his attributes. So who is Cafferty? Nobody knows, certainly not me. Then Byrne turned up. Oi, he seemed to say, what about me? So I had to let him, or possibly her, in. Byrne is just as absent as Cafferty, in person anyway. Somewhere on the periphery is O'Brien. Well, he's absent too, but his horse pops up from time to time. Well, everything I do know about Cafferty and his friends is in the poems, so I'd better get on with them. I'll start with Cafferty's truck. Cafferty's truck brings the sad news as gulls wheel and screech over the small grey town. The truck stops at each house. The birds shriek their senseless fugue. The town gets smaller and greyer. Cafferty's done. The gulls' eyes glitter. They crisscross the sky, bickering, snatching. The town sighs and settles. Byrne, in his trim red van, respectfully follows Cafferty's yesterdays with his tomorrows. Now, in the next few poems, we follow Cafferty on his journeys round and about. Cafferty's map takes him all the way there, and when he arrives, tells him where to go next. He follows his map where the map doesn't go, and gets there and turns in his tracks and follows the map to get safely back. Lunch. The truck gravels to a stop. Crows bounce and scramble, hop and argue, their black shapes black against glabrous grass, toothless fence, fuliginous tree. The truck sneezes awake, continues on its way. The crows discuss a crumpled paper bag. Journey. The truck makes its way through village and town and comes to a stop. Everyone's there. The girls skip and the boys stare. And on it goes to the big town where all streets lead to the central square, and the girls want to skip and the boys don't care. And up through the hills goes the rackety truck to a place with a horse and a church and a pub, where the girls don't skip and the boys aren't there. Somewhat to my surprise, Cafferty puts to sea in the next poem. His truck must be stowed somewhere in the nether regions of the vessel. I wonder if perhaps it's infected the ship, or perhaps Cafferty was going off on or returning from an adventure. Or perhaps this means of transport is the only one he could afford. Cafferty at sea. Its ancient diesels are stalled, leaving a faint smell of fuel. The rust-smeared ferries becalmed in the oil-smooth sea. The tread plate still, except there is intermittent distant knocking. Sailors lounge against the rails, smoking, spitting. Slowly, the boat rotates. Slovenly windows peer into fading light. But at least he's back on dry land now. Villiers Street, light darks. The river invisibles. Hurriers clack. Pubs bulge. Cobbles slime. News flaps. Windows gloat. A truck sighs. And I think it's about time we heard about Burn again. Burn's van capers along the highway, stopping often, leaving grey eyes shining. Turns, returns for washing, rinsing, leathering, buffing, filling up again. Where's Cafferty gone? He seems to be in a garden. In the garden, birds converse across the space. Flowers whisper each to each, their scent absorbed by bees. Breezes dance a minuet. Next door's child appears, sinks and appears again. The truck is. The following poem reminds me of train spotting, stamp collecting, those kinds of pursuit, where the important thing seems not so much the inherent interest of the collected items, but the completeness of the collection. Cafferty and the history of knitting. In the back of his truck, the complete set, save volume 9, in a cardboard box. The truck stops at a shop, stops at another, at all the shops. The box describes a perfect arc. Here's O'Brien, the third of the musketeers, or perhaps not. O'Brien's horse won. In the field, with its simple fence and its ancient meadow, its single oak, where it never rains but the sun is shy, by the lane from the road which is never still, stands the horse. And I'll end part one of my reading with a visit to a supermarket. Cafferty in Tesco. A cart rattles along the aisle under the bleak light, stops. Fresh mint, whitening, strawberry, vitalize, white shock, advanced whitening, original fluoride, original with fluoride, fluoride fresh mint, white brilliance radiant mint, 3D white glamorous shine, max fresh with cooling crystals, extreme whitening with baking soda, advanced white with micro cleansing crystals, total advanced clean antibacterial and fluoride, and clatters on. So that's the end of Cafferty part one.
Thank you, Robin. I think we've got an idea of what Cafferty's truck is about now. Brilliant. I loved it. Now we're going to hear our first guest, or Robin's first guest rather, Wendy Klein, studied drama and English at the University of Utah and San Francisco State University. She left the USA in 1964 to come to Europe, living in Sweden, France, and Germany, before coming to England in 1971. Since beginning to write seriously in 1998, she has published 4 collections of poetry, including a recent selected called Out of the Blue from the High Window Press, and a pamphlet, Let Battle Commence, from us, Dempsey and Windle. Winner of numerous competitions, she is widely published in magazines and journals. And so, Wendy, we'd love to hear from you now, please.
Thank you to Robin for inviting me, to Dempsey and Windle for having me. You may be tired of hearing from me. I've been very much on your front. The first short piece was written after moving house 2 years ago and should probably be dedicated to our infamous Home Secretary. Home is where the stories start, is what is written on the packaging of our new bookcases. Hours late on this blustery evening, the 2 men delivering them are on their penultimate gig. It is November bleak, and they must be back in Birmingham at 5 a.m. to start the next day's work. They are Indian, one a Sikh, immigrants keeping their families alive here. Polite, smiling, all but bowing, they offer to unwrap the bulky parcels as if we look helpless or as if we might be reporting on their performance. Who dares to say we can do without them? Their energy and grace, born of need. Who dares? I think it would be useful to remind Ms. Patel that it is not illegal to cross the channel. Refugees are neither migrants, nor illegal, nor invaders. I grew up against the background of the Vietnam War, which ran for 20 years between 1955 and 1975. Boats featured at the end of that conflict, a means of escape I did not fully understand until I went to Vietnam myself a few years ago. A boat people. Hardly a surprise that they took to the water, these river folk with their floating markets, their floating villages. Hardly a surprise that picking up the oars of ramshackle crafts could seem like a solution. When 6-year-old children can row their younger siblings standing up, gliding forwards, the logic of it, compared to our Western clumsiness, traveling with our backs turned towards where we are going. There in the Mekong, they row in the middle where the tour boats glide among the water hyacinths. They sell tiny bananas like bright yellow fingers, wave them, their fruit of unimaginable sweetness, point with pride to the family pineapples stacked in the stern, show us how they are the ripest and best. Painted on the bows of their boats, the eyes are fixed on us as they approach, eyes wide open to show them where they are going. I think there's something about the world right now that has got my political conscience running in overdrive. Boats, now guns. How I learned about them firsthand from a boyfriend way back. Shooting lesson. Before Builder's bum was an everyday look, when Levi's had to be able to freestand in their broken-in grime, and mothers could be pilloried for sneaking them into the laundry, I was in adolescent lust with him. His chipped front tooth, his Elvis quiff, his offer to teach me to shoot. The gun he chose, a .22 caliber rifle, was surely a sign of his affection because the kick was less likely to bruise my shoulder. How proud I was when he cupped my elbow as I shot my first Coke can off a fence post, not knowing how we would move on, that it wouldn't just finish with the raucous crow swearing to its last squawk, that it would be the red-winged blackbird, its wary eye still open wide, its beak full of song, before the tumble in silence. Stunned. Every time I think I have written about my father for the last time, he wanders in again in another job involving another move. This poem is called Loot. Look at the shape of it, like a teardrop. The depth, the back that's called a shell, the strings that are made of sheep's gut. Close cousin to the guitar, the lute has a lighter sound. Once upon a time, it was the instrument. Even the Queen had one, could play it. What if my father had owned one, could play it, had brought it to his high school English class, held it, leaning against his desk like a rock star, explained how it was handcrafted way over 400 years ago in France? What if some tough kid had asked, is that what guitars looked like in the olden days? And my father had answered yes, and teased a pop tune out of the sheep gut strings, and the kids had thumped their desks and sung along. Would we have stayed on another year? Avoided the next new school, the next house, the next neighbors, no friends? Instead, he tells the story of the lute player's daughter who preferred playing a tin pipe she bought for tuppence in the market, said how she liked music made of breath, not formed from fingers. And the tough kid blew a raspberry, and my father groaned, and the bell rang for lunch. Intentional or not, most readings seem to include at least one ekphrastic poem. This, my penultimate, is inspired by Michael Palin's television retrospective on the American painter Andrew Wyeth. I'm sure you will have run across it. It's titled Christina's World. From the program, I learned more about Christina. Christina's other world. The woman gazing across a field looks young and carefree on a tranquil afternoon. Her hair is tied back loosely, wisps escaping in an imagined summer breeze, legs folded beneath her in a graceful pose, frock a muted shade of pink. The scene looks peaceful, pastoral. An observer might fail to notice the tension in her left arm, driving her forward, the right arm braced behind, head straining toward a house on the brow of the hill, compelling her from where she's dragged herself on hands and knees, as she does daily, without complaint, to accomplish her tasks, refusing help as she's always done, crippled from childhood. Here, she has allowed the artist to capture her beauty in deceptive repose, not scrabbling through grass, gravel, or mud on bone-thin arms to dig and weed and plant, scorning the sticks she's been offered to ease her through the tortuous transitions. Her whole body seems to yearn toward the gray farmhouse in the distance. The artist offers only the subtlest of clues, leaves the observer to unearth the backstory. Curious balancing act between what we think we see and what is truly there. It seems appropriate to finish with a lockdown poem, with that particular focus that we had on the same scene, viewed from the same spot, day on day. This poem is called Strutting Through. Mask of crimson crepe, of iridian-collared brash in your masculinity, your desirability, you strut our lockdown field, poking your head up over and over above the waves of unmown grass, citing your hens, two drab, devoted girls who drift in your wake, eager, sycophantic. You don't know that anything is wrong out there. No news of a plague disturbs your arrogance. What you don't know can't harm you. Your field world, large and small at once, is too full of big bird bounty. Oh, uncommon pheasant, has no one told you that the very sky that shelters you, black holes are devouring stars?
Thank you, Wendy. It was lovely, lovely set of poems. Thank you. The pheasant one really got to me because on Facebook, I've been snapping birds all over the place.
You have, yes.
Yes. And that really got to me. The pheasants are beautiful, aren't they? But they're very nice poems. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Robin, I think you're going to read another short set, aren't you?
I am. Shorter this time. Cafferty Part 2. So let's not disturb Burn. Burn at night 1. A van in the car park between fresh white lines, nodding asleep. While Burn's van is asleep, we make a small diversion into quartet land. I wonder who the expensively dressed man can be. Owl. A man, possibly up to no good, wearing a double-breasted Savile Row suit with a white dahlia in its buttonhole and tapping a broken pencil on his teeth, is leaning against the portal of the local branch of Coots. He cannot but observe, passing along the deep lane as the fading light falls on the leaded windows and grey stone of the building, on the cornflowers in the churchyard and across the open field beyond where a lone horse grazes, a rattling truck. He is not to know that the vehicle is bent on reaching the village before Madame Sosostris's garage runs down its shutters and its proprietor retreats into silence, with only her owl for company. The truck's racketiness, a key feature of its being, might nevertheless be suggestive to the smartly dressed man of a limited future for its big ends. Wake up time. Burn at night too. Snaps awake, ready to go, its engine waffling like a contented tiger. Jeff Koons's work deals with popular culture, and a typical sculpture depicts everyday objects, including balloon animals produced in stainless steel with mirror finished surfaces. The critics are certainly divided. Is it pioneering and of major art historical importance, or is it kitsch, crass and cynical self-merchandising? Certainly isn't quiche, I've heard of that. I've included as an epigraph a statement made by Koons, which bears on this question. Cafferty visits the Jeff Koons exhibition. To know is an enrichment, but you don't have to. Jeff Koons. The truck is parked as close as permitted to the Ashmolean Museum in Beaumont Street, Oxford. After a time, it inches from its parking space and enters the traffic in order to go somewhere else. At last, a meeting between Cafferty and Byrne. The meeting. The truck labors along the long road up. The van, spick and span, speeds by on the other side, wafts by with hardly a sigh. First Koons, then a library. Cafferty seems to be in a cultured mood in this part of the pamphlet. Library. Cafferty's trucks by the concretey steps and the old double doors which no one can see through, to the counter which frowns at the ignorant shelves and the somnolent trolleys. It starts with a shake, pulls into the road and proceeds on its rackety way. But here's Byrne again, not the cultural type. Byrne's shiny van, the cream smooth red van with its windows that sparkle and tires that glow, its near noiseless motor draws glances of envy from those who go from here to there or there to here, do this or that, are used to Cafferty's truck. Here endeth Cafferty Part 2.
Yes, I certainly enjoyed his visit to Jeff Koons. I was really with that. That was fantastic. Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Ian House, who is our other guest. Ian taught English for over 30 years in various secondary schools in England and the USA. He then taught for 3 years in language schools in Moscow and elsewhere in Eastern Europe. During all that time, he wrote about 2 poems a year, he says. On retirement, the floodgates opened and he has had 3 collections of poems published by Two Rivers Press, the latest of which, Just a Moment, came out in April 2020. So we're all going to mute ourselves for Ian House, please.
Thank you, Janice. Just a bit of blatant self-advertising here. I don't know whether the cover of Just a Moment is showing up here. Beautiful cover by Sally Castle. And all my poems are taken from that collection, By this time, I'd probably be rather bored reading it, but because of COVID, I've done fewer readings than normal. So I thought what I would do is choose some poems that follow on from Robin's Mysterious People, and Cafferty, Byrne and O'Brien, Mysterious, and Mystery of Others is the theme of these poems. And the first one came out of a workshop at the Museum of English Rural Life in Reading. And I was working with a pair of children's shoes, which had been walled up in a farmhouse for about 200 years. Apparently, shoes and other items were often walled up in order to keep off the evil spirits. Afterlife. Stored in a plastic lunchbox in a job lot of clodhopper boots. Nothing's more delicate than object number 52/345/1 and 2, class, personal clothing, footwear. Hand-stitched with wedge heels, cracked and shiny, the leather dried out. Nothing is more down to earth than these shoes, and nothing more wonderful. For it's someone's life I have in my hands, the shape and sweat of the foot of a 6-month child, holes bursting the sides with her outgrowings. I could hardly be closer to her nor further off. Under cotton gloves, my fingers yearn for the feel of the leather her fingers touched. A scrap of a thing, but solid, at the heart of a mist of conjectures, the lives she might have had, cankered at the root or blossoming and many branched. Found in a farmhouse bedroom, sealed 200 years ago, a mother's treasure or leftover hand-me-downs or sturdy little kickers to ward off the evil ones. I cradle a shoe in my hand, slip it over the wriggling foot, gently fasten vanished buckle. The second one is the mandatory ekphrastic poem, and it's based on a painting by Manet, The Spotted Veil. Had the young woman passed me in the street or perhaps on the stairs, and I noticed her dresses rich blue, the set of her head, the businesslike hat. Had she paused for a moment, and I'd puzzled at the wrinkled throat, the mannish grip on her stick, the veil, the nude forearm, I'd have thought how to others we're displayed and mysterious, but still not have grasped what this painting reveals, how what's present, the given, is less a moment suspended than a site of transition from whatever one's come from to wherever one's going. Relationships are often fraught, as we all know, and people who are very close to one another may know very little about one another. In this poem, the bolt of lightning that passes from the sky to the earth is called the leader, and the bolt that passes then from the earth to the sky is the return bolt. It's called Laws of Nature. That afternoon, the breeze flopped along, expired on their faces like a damp flannel. Sky gathered its weight, forced them indoors to a room that had shrunk, a room that glowered as clouds blackened, indelible, fire fringed. She flounced, he sat with a book, they listened. The clock counted their injuries. Crystals collided, charges built. Words passed, had to. The return bolt, brighter, deadlier than the leader. The business of going to an optician is very interesting one, because on this occasion, the optician was a very beautiful Indian woman. And there in the dark, of course, she has to get very, very close to you. And it's an extraordinary experience of something which is an utterly professional relationship. And at the same time, I'm aware from when the light was on before, that this is a very beautiful woman who is standing about an inch from me and peering into my eye. So that's why the poem is called Professional. Obviously you get a lot of light shone in your eyes, and there are after images. Professional. In the breathless and absolute dark, her face close to mine as a lover's. Is the afterlife like this, an unsensed awareness of bodies? She searches with a gimlet light to the back of each eye, murmurs, lovely, and lovely again, she murmurs, a voice velvety as the dark. And though she has seen right through me, through the window to the macula, she knows nothing about me, but for an orange bugaboo and the blaze of crimson and gold that fences the inch between us. I don't know whether others have had the experience that I certainly have of when you wake up in the morning, all sorts of thoughts seem to be wandering around the bedroom, and one hasn't yet collected one's thoughts and haven't collected myself. So I'm sort of separated from myself, just these thoughts wandering around, nothing to do with me. The corpus callosum, as you may know, is the bundle of nerve fibers that joins the two cerebral hemispheres. Coming to. It would be fun, wouldn't it, to watch a left hand unstitch what the right hand is sewing. One of the thoughts that wandered round the bedroom at dawn, before the corpus callosum had bound me, before I was founded, assembled, tensed for the day's traffic, like the cables and piers directing thousands of tons through clay down to bedrock, or millions to tramp across rivers and gorges. Bridge has its uses, but my feet remember the joy of leaping from one chancy stone to the next, and spiders spin their aerial suspensions from themselves. And the last poem also comes out of a workshop. This was at the Reading Abbey, and it took place in the gateway that has sort of partly survived. And my poem is based on a list of relics that was made by a 12th century monk, because Reading was famous for its abbey and for its wonderful collection of bits and pieces. And I was lucky enough to do the workshop, finding a room all on my own, which was, I felt like the monk in his cell, compiling this list. And the poem is called Let His Bones Live. I'm trying to revive, understand this old monk. Let his bones live. Glance at this list and you'd think how charming the credulous faith of the 12th century monk who listed the splinters of wood from the cross, the bones and flesh of the martyrs, fragments of cloth that wiped the Lord's sweat. Yet, as I read in this bare room within yards of the place it was written, and wonder if his task were privilege or penance, celebration or chore, a catalogue of miraculous salvifics or of money-spinning gewgaws, that old monk stirs to life, no dry as dust or blind believer, but a skeptic, a Hair of Mary, reputedly, a fanciful poet, Jesus's umbilicus or foreskin. Surely he chuckled at a few grains of earth dug up at Calvary. But as he handled the girdle and tunic, shreds that had touched the most intimate places of the Virgin Mother, he was surely also dumbfounded, as each day at the altar went bread and flesh in his hands, and then that enormous collection of rags of the body parts sang in his ears, and the glorious company of the apostles, the noble army of martyrs, appeared to his eyes. After 230 entries, he's had enough. There are yet more sounds just like Cromwell's man, a multitude of small bones, laces, stones and arms, which would occupy 4 sheets of paper to make an inventory of every part thereof. And down the centuries, from that treasury of faith, I hear him bless the Lord, and from that dust heap, I catch the whisper of boredom, doubt, despair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was quite a sad ending to that one, that last one, but very strong poem. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I really enjoyed them all. Thank you. And people have been writing nice things in the chat line as well. So everyone, if you want to keep your chat, the chat that's been going on here, you can download it to your own computer. Anyone can, by using the 3 little dots at the bottom. Just press on that, and it gives you the chance to download the chat to your computer, so you can read it in your own time and save it. So thank you very much. And now we've got, sadly, final reading from Robin. Robin, please read for us again.
Cafferty Part 3. Now, I'll start Part 3 with an egg, and I hope it's not a curate's one. The egg. Call the man with the head of an eagle. Let him bring me an egg. Thus spake Ashurbanipal. On the part occupied table for 2, in the corner of Café Nineveh, under the books on the thronging shelves, by the window through which a truck may be seen, the long-awaited egg is served, scrambled with buttered toast. Now, in case you're wondering who Ashurbanipal is or was, he was the king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire from 668 to his death in 631 BC. He was the 4th king of the Sargonid dynasty, and of course, as I'm sure most of you will know, his father was Esarhaddon. A wonderful bird is the pelican. His beak can hold more than his belly can. He can hold in his beak enough food for a week, but I'll be darned if I know how the hell he can. This is not by me, of course. It was written by Dixon Lanier Merritt, who, as you probably know, was at one time Tennessee State Director of Public Safety and a founding member of the Tennessee Ornithological Society. I'm sure he's right to say that the pelican is wonderful, but the axolotl, in my opinion, is even wonderfuler. Cafferty at the aquarium. The axolotl floats head down, tail drooping, legs dangling, as if hanging from the surface, eyes focused on nowhere, drifts in the filter's currents. Spasm, spasm, flailing, nothing, forgotten. The feature of the salamander that attracts most attention is its healing ability. The axolotl is capable of the regeneration of entire lost appendages in a period of months, and in certain cases, more vital structures. Some have indeed been found restoring the less vital parts of their brains. They can also readily accept transplants from other individuals, including eyes and parts of the brain, restoring these alien organs to full functionality. Floats at the tank's top like a translucent banana. Hands and feet so delicate. Fingers with nothing to grip. Eyes with nothing to see. Well, that's quite enough of aquaria and axolotls. Time for Burn again. Burn in Halfords. The basket is full of leathers and cloths and tins and cartons and paint, red gold ghost pearl for touch-up, a packet of frankincense and myrrh in a block. 2 poems to go. Has Cafferty returned to cultural pursuits, or is something else going on? Arts and crafts. In the back of the truck, in a hidden place, Fininbrun, Cetos, Alcanet, Quab, Xylocarb, Saab, sachets of phlogiston, Tabalian. Ingredients for... And to finish, a poem in which all 3 characters appear, sort of. O'Brien's Horse, 2. O'Brien's horse is always lame, and there's a truck which is much the same, parked near the place where the horse is grazing while a van goes flying by. So that's the end of my reading. Thanks to all of you for listening.